What other behavioral changes do you typically see in teams when you make the shift for paying for results?
One of the biggest is the way they communicate. So information right now, what's that quote? The biggest problem with communication is the illusion it's taking place. So I think there's an illusion today that we're actually communicating well. People hear us when we say, "Hey, I need this job done on Friday," or they hear us when we say, "Make sure you do that correctly," or they hear us when we say, "Let's all work as a team today." That's nice, but sometimes that's just bouncing off of their eardrums and back out into the universe instead of being absorbed because it doesn't mean anything to them. Once it actually means something, the communication takes on a different life because communication now it also starts to operate bidirectionally, right? And now you can start to absorb information moving up the organization. We ask question all the time, how can we get better? Now I've got a team of people that is more interested in answering that question. I'll go to a job site. We used to do this more often. I don't do as much anymore, but go to the job site, ask the crew if they're making any money on this job. Right. So if you're in construction, you'll kind of understand how funny that is. You go to your job site and you ask your team doing the work, or imagine a manufacturing facility or anywhere else. You go to your team and say, is this a money making day for us, for you? Now, if they're paid by the hour, they go, well, I'm getting paid, right? But eventually they learn to answer that question. When your team doing the work can answer the question of whether or not we're making any money today, then you're winning. You got to coach them and teach them into this. They don't come always equipped with all of that language and all of that training. Some of them are going to be better at it than others. But you start driving in financial literacy to your organization because now they've got a reason to care about it. You start communicating about budgets, gross profit numbers, cost of goods sold, all these things that usually just sit within the top, 10% of an organization. Push that information down because now they have a reason to care. So they have a reason to listen. They have a reason to absorb what you're telling.
Yeah. In your experience, what percentage of companies are actually being that transparent and using this kind of comp structure as well?
Oh, it's fractionally, you're almost invisible as a percentage still. I think that's when we first built Protiv, we built it because we couldn't buy one. We went to the market and you go to Google and you say, I want to buy an incentive comp management system for hourly workers, and Google gives you zero, sorry, there's no response, kind of thing. And it just, there weren't systems, nobody had built systems to manage this kind of thing before. And which is funny because half of the U.S. workforce is paid by the hour, and there's just not a great model for aligning that compensation system to performance. So we had to build it.
Yeah, here's maybe an opportunity to change some hearts and minds of listeners out there in the audience, because comp is really often thought of as a finance function, but it's one of the many inputs that impact the culture of an organization. So tell the leaders out there who are listening how they should think about the relationship between the pay structures and the actual culture they're trying to create.
Yeah. So compensation is a vehicle for you to have conversations about all this culture stuff, right? I mean, it's because it's part of the equation, but there are a lot of employees who just their pay is not the only thing that matters to them. In fact, really in an evolved corporate culture, I would suggest that compensation is a beginning. It's a stake in the ground that I think you need to get right. But then from that, you need to build rewards and incentives that are very dialed in. The better you know your team, the more you can do this. There may be employees who flexible time off, gold stars, different things drive their upper levels of their performance. So you got to learn that about your team. Some people start with the gold star, the points, all that is their kind of rewards program. I think that's a mistake for hourly workers. I think you have to start with compensation and make sure they're making more money. But once you have that, then move your engagement with your team around compensation into things that are more aligned to them as a person, which means you have to get to know your team, which is a big part of what I preach all the time on company culture. Foundationally, there are some things. One is it needs to be unique and authentic to you as a leader. If you try and build a culture that is very metric driven, but you're a creative mind, that's probably not going to create alignment. If you're a very process oriented person, and then but you say, oh no, we're family first. probably not going to stick. So you need to have a company culture um, that is very aligned to who you are, that's true and authentic to you. But then you also have the communication. I think is a obvious part of it, but probably the part people don't understand is what does it mean to invest in your people?